Welcome all to Mortals Watch the Day in part 2 of Eighth Wonder, our survey of RP postcard views centering around the opening of the Mersey Tunnel on the 18th of July 1934. The series of photographs considered today, in common with those seen in part 1, were published by Valentine's Limited and once again utilised material first credited to Stewart Bale Limited. This time, however, Edward Stewart Bale is understood to have been directly responsible for the two interior shots of the Mersey Tunnel comprising the core of the collection taken in late June, early July 1934, before the tunnel was opened by King George V. The remaining picture postcards in the series were retouched after the fact, with Bale's photographs given somewhat fancifully artistic forced perspective impressions of the appearance of the tunnel as automobiles were envisaged to drive through it. The majority of these picture postcards were made available for sale in the run-up to the opening of the tunnel by the King on 18th of July, thus comprising the first glimpse the general British public would have of the inside of the new construction. The final card in the series, a multi-view of 4 of the others, was by far the biggest seller in the group, but did not appear until later on in the year, i.e. after the tunnel had opened. But let's begin at the beginning. Edward Stewart Bale's photograph captured the interior of the Mersey Tunnel, Liverpool and Birkenhead, in parentheses, under the Mersey. It introduces the classic view of the as yet untrammelled roadway around its midpoint, looking back towards Liverpool and from a position around 170 feet below the river waterline. The camera is here positioned centrally and relatively low to the ground, the better to show off the dramatic incline of the tunnel stretching up and away into the far distance. For such a simple composition, the geometric symmetry of the semicircular walls, contrasted with the receding diagonals of the side railings and lane lines, is economy exemplified. There is an absorbing amount of surface detail captured. Witness, for example, the ambient gleam of the black glass tiles lining the lower half of the tunnel wall, the various fire hydrant points punctuating either side of the curved expanse, or the horizontal latticing of the original road decking. Fluorescent tube lighting illuminates the whole, powered by the state-of-the-art man-web electricity distribution system, which was backed up by the tunnel's own diesel generators in the event of power failure. Bale's second tunnel photograph in the series is considerably more complex than the first, captured Mersey Tunnel junction chamber showing main and branch tunnels. This time the vantage point is off-centre, looking towards the Birkenhead exit, allowing the curvature of the main tunnel to peel off to the left, whilst the arterial flow of the smaller two-lane branch dock exit tunnel is visible on the right. This junction chamber, which owing to its crane-like curve indeed resembles the inner workings of the aorta, is again brightly lit, courtesy of the fluorescent tube lights housed in the walls, but although also visible at each of the various pinch points are the electric light traffic lights mounted in rectangular boxes attached to the ceiling to regulate traffic flow, imparting a decidedly novel and futuristic air to proceedings, reminiscent of something out of a science fiction film, think Fritz Lang's Metropolis, for example, or a novel, rather than something associated with everyday life. Edward Stewart Bale's evocative pair of interior tunnel photographs form the basis of a number of speedily mocked-up picture postcards intended to impart to the public what the new tunnel would look like when used by traffic. Although graphic retouching was a common enough practice in the production of RP postcards, rarely was an original subject exposed to the kind of extensive reworking undertaken in adapting Bale's photographs for this purpose. To return to interior of Mersey Tunnel under the River Mersey, Bale's original photograph is still clearly visible as background in the retouched version, but the incorporation of hand-painted, forced perspective cars, lorries and buses into the shot changes its visual appearance completely. It is perhaps a little unfair to describe the work done here as retouching, because the painted element is not so much a modification of the photographic original as an entirely new addition. In this case, the traffic was painted to scale by the graphic artist onto a celluloid transparency, which was then rephotographed over a positive of the Bale original to give the impression of a composite whole. At first glance, the illusion remains pretty effective, but if examined closely, particularly the strange brick-like overpainting of the road decking, it quickly unravels. Nevertheless, the composite was considered more than effective enough to warrant an even more rapid production of a variant, this time incorporating a licensed W&D Downey photograph of King George V himself, and an illustrated cross-section of the tunnel's elevated roadway in circular insets, subtitled "Opened by His Majesty the King," and available on the market from the 18th of July 1834. Somewhat less successfully, Edward Stewart Bale's Mersey Tunnel junction chamber showing main and branch tunnels was subjected to the same reworking by transparent overlay. This time, the graphic artist encountered severe difficulties in successfully rendering automobiles, as it were, on the curve, a factor amply demonstrated by the unconvincingly stretched vehicle occupying much of the right foreground. But by far the most alarming element of this rework composition is the sight of the open-top convertible bottom left being driven by an occupant seemingly without a head. Interestingly, the artist chooses to populate the scene with traffic heading towards and back along the main tunnel. There is no indication that traffic of any kind is present in the branch dock exit to the right, meaning that this section of the picture is, by and large, the only unchanged portion of the Bale original. The final RP postcard in this related group, the aforementioned multi-view entitled Mersey Tunnel, Liverpool, appeared on the market in late September 1934 and was even made available for sale to eager souvenir hunters and collectors from the manned tunnel kiosks located at Kingsway on the Liverpool side and King Square, Birkenhead, a factor that must have influenced its popularity and ubiquity, at least amongst the motoring public. It depicts each of the four views already discussed, the Edward Stewart Bale originals featuring the empty tunnel views on the left-hand side and the reworked versions with added traffic on the right. The central cabochon features an expertly cropped photograph attributed to Stewart Bale Limited of the entrance to the tunnel on Kingsway as it appeared just a few weeks after its official opening. Multi-view picture postcards such as this were already considered old-fashioned by the time the Mersey Tunnel card appeared, but the economic benefits of acquiring 4 or 5 views of the same subject, especially as it were on the move, outweighed such a trivial concern, and so the cards were sold on in their many thousands. The Mersey Tunnel was an instant unqualified success. Automobile traffic alone within the first year of its opening surpassed an impressive 2 million vehicles, this figure rising to over 4 million annually by the onset of World War II in 1939. Looking back, it's difficult now not to see the continuous publication of RP postcards depicting the enterprise as a contributing factor to this ongoing success story. Because the tunnel was such a difficult subject to photograph, even with ordinarily reliable handhelds, owing to the nature of travel and the limited light levels inside, by and large the only way for interested visitors to secure a pictorial memento of their journey through this eighth wonder of the world, as the tunnel was described, and show family and friends back home, was via the purchase of a postcard or two. This must surely explain why Valentine's picture postcards of the tunnel interiors remained in circulation until well into the 1950s, and why the tunnel remains an object of fascination in perpetuity.